AI is here and it wants to take your job. Ex-Google exec is saying that the idea that AI will create new jobs is 100% crap. Robinhood's CEO says a majority of its new code is AI generated. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei is back in the news, so he's again blowing the whistle, ringing the alarm, saying that AI is going to cut half of entry-level jobs by 2030. Anthropic CEO reaffirms his warning. There's a new report out of the World Economic Forum, so they put out their projections for what happens to jobs by 2030. And good news, everyone, it's projected to grow 7%. So that makes for a great, very positive headline. But when you dig and look at the actual data, it doesn't look so good. In fact, it kind of supports exactly what Dario's saying. AI is going to cut half of entry-level jobs by 2030. So really fast, let me give you just a brief summary of this article. What's this summary AI generated? This is not okay. They took our jobs. But all jokes aside, Dario has been saying the same thing for a while now. Last 6 months, he's been in the news multiple times, kind of saying the same thing. He's not vaguely saying that AI is going to take all jobs. He's pointing to a very specific and dangerous segment of jobs to lose. He's saying that AI could wipe out half of entry-level white-collar jobs within the next 5 years. He's quoted here saying specifically, if we look at like entry-level white, I think of people who work at law firms, like first-year associates. There's a lot of document review. By the way, if you're editing, if like you're an editor for a newspaper and the person you're interviewing, like they forget to say a word, you can add that word in there. It doesn't lose any context, it doesn't change the context, but I digress. And he's also saying this. He added that governments across the world were downplaying the threat when AI's rising use could lead to a significant spike in unemployment numbers. The godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, said what's actually going to happen is rich people are going to use AI to replace workers. It's going to create massive unemployment and a huge rise in profits. It'll make a few people much richer and most people poorer. That's not AI's fault. That is the capitalist system. Dr. Roman Yampolsky also is saying something similar. He's saying that AI could leave 99% of workers jobless by 2030. So this is Dr. Roman Yampolsky. So he's, I guess, part of the Future of Life Institute. Now, one interesting thing to note here is that a lot of these people, we've seen what they've been saying for a while, and a lot of them, even though originally maybe they were coming from different opinions where AI is going to take us, a lot of them are seemingly they're converging now more and more on this idea of AI taking jobs. Both Dr. Hinton and Dr. Yampolsky, they've both talked about AI safety, the potential for some catastrophic existential risk as AI develops and perhaps gets outside of our ability to control it. But more recently, they're switching to talking about jobs, specifically seemingly like just in the last couple of weeks. Dario Amodei is also talking a lot about that. And OpenAI has recently pivoted into thinking about jobs as well and taking concrete steps to try to address the problem. We'll talk about that in just a second. We also recently heard from Mo Gadot, who is an ex-Google exec, or as Rohan Pal puts it here, ex-Google ex-exec Mo Gadot. He really went all out on the X's there. I'm just kidding. Rohan is absolutely killing it. He's featured in a paper in the Economic Times newspaper, so congratulations to him. He's posted a few absolutely incredible breakdowns of scientific papers, so just well-deserved. But he continues here. So he, as in Mo Gadot, gives some examples. An app at his startup that was built by 3 people using AI tools, work he once says needed 350 developers. And this is exactly what's happening in many places, not complete replacement, but reduction. Task AI now does very well, like marketing copy, tax prep, data cleanup, coding, lesson plans. AI can now make a non-native writer's hit pro quality. And by the way, I mean, that's anecdotal, yes, but me personally, I'm hearing a lot more similar things being said. Me and Dylan on our Wes and Dylan podcast, we did an interview with Max Hurton, who is, quote unquote, vibe coding entire games from scratch using LLMs like Grok, Gemini, GPT-5, etc. And Claude Code, of course, I did not mean to leave that out. Claude shows up as one of the best models for coding consistently. But he's talked to a lot of people that have created these games in the past. And I'm not talking about the actual software engineers, the developers, but rather the people that design these games and help build them, like the people that are, I guess, the producers or whatever you want to call it, people with experience, not necessarily the actual coding experience, but just how do you make a great game? When most people asked, let's say 5 years ago, how long would it take to create a game like this? This is what they said.
Sort of mentors that I've been showing the game and getting feedback from. And one person estimated a team of 10 and 18 months or something like that, which I don't know if that's right.
I almost did a spit take when he said it. You can probably tell by my face. That's the exact moment when he says those numbers. I was about to just spit my drink out. By the way, that was just iced coffee. Don't get any ideas. But the point being is that he was able to create this game in 3 to 4 months. Again, one person. Total cost was thousands of dollars in, AI API costs. So as you're coding, you're spending some money to produce the code by the LLMs. Well, that's Gemini, Claude, Grok, or GPT-5. There is that cost, but we're talking thousands of dollars. In the interview, we actually go through and we find the exact amount. But that's a huge drop in the number of people that are needed to build a game like that. That's a pretty sizable chunk taken out of how long something like that takes to build. And as I was thinking about it during the interview, I started kind of thinking about it. I was like, yeah, so you need coders. You need people that are designing the assets. You need the people that are making the music. This game involved speech and translation. It's kind of a language learning game. So, in that sense, you would need like a translator. You need a native speaker to voice certain things for you. I mean, you can see you need quite a team to develop something like this. Now you need one person, a few months. Let's call it was under 10,000 total API costs that were needed. If I recall correctly, the biggest stumbling block that he faced was creating animation of sprites. So if you have a moving character that kind of has an idle animation or an attacking animation, creating those, we don't have AI that easily does it with custom graphics quite yet, although I fully imagine that we're going to have that very soon. So that's one area where he had to go and have a human being kind of create those animation tiles or whatever you call them, but basically those recurring animations for idle and attack animation, whatever. But that's just one example of where you can see there's a huge workforce reduction. Now, obviously, vibe coding, all that, it hasn't fully replaced real engineers, right? It's not at a point where it can create incredible stuff, but the technology is improving. And this is the worst that it will ever be. And the improvement, I've been tracking for a few years now, just testing every new model that comes out. The improvements are good. They're consistent. I don't feel like we're running into a wall. No, it's not this exponential thing where it just becomes the superhuman coder and everybody else is obsolete, but the progress is undeniable. Fast forward that a year, 2 or 5, right? So by 2030, right? If somebody's designing a game like this by themselves in 4 months, in 2025, what kind of a game will they be able to create by 2030? Is it possible that people will create AAA games, something like GTA 5 by that point? Maybe that's too soon, but I mean, there's a definite momentum forward progress. Now you might be saying, but what about that WEF thing? It had charts and everything. That must be good. They said it was growing, right? So here's that chart. Here on the left side in purple, we have the jobs that are destroyed. So fully sort of displaced jobs. The blue is stable jobs. And on the right, we have new jobs. So there's a lot of, right? So we're betting on all these new jobs to be created. In the next 5 years, 170 million jobs are projected to be created and 92 million jobs to be displaced. And that's a net employment increase of 7%, right? So the total number of jobs is going to go up. So that sounds really good, but what are these new jobs created? What are these growing jobs that we're relying on to create a 7% job increase? And what are the jobs that are declining, that are going away? Well, so top fastest growing jobs. So the top one is big data specialist, growing at over 100%. The next one is fintech engineers, right? Almost 100% growth. AI and machine learning specialists, over 80%. And then we have software and application developers, security management specialists, data warehouse specialists, autonomous vehicles, UI and UX, etc., etc., etc. You can see a pattern there. They're AI jobs, the AI machine related data, autonomous this and that jobs. On the other side, we have these fastest declining jobs: postal service clerks, bank teller clerks, data entry clerks, cashier and ticket clerks, admin, clerk, graphic designers, examiners, investigators, legal official, legal secretaries, and telemarketers. A lot of those strike me as potentially entry-level jobs. Specifically in the white collar type of work. These are entry level jobs. Being a bank teller was one of my first jobs, I think. I mean, there's literally 3 or 4 jobs in here that I did in my early 20s when I was getting started. So this is kind of what I needed to pick up some skills, build a resume. All of that was a complete waste of time because I do this now. So looking at that data, when Dario Amodei says AI to gut half of entry-level jobs by 2030, I think those statistics there that we just saw, I feel like it kind of reaffirms that. It supports that, right? We can squabble over the exact numbers, but I mean, directionally, those two messages are correct. Like here's all the entry-level jobs that are declining year over year by 20% or 10%. And what he's saying, these are not polar opposites. They're very similar. It's hard to project exactly what happens in the future, but they're talking about the same future. The thing that's supposed to save us and, in fact, kind of push us in the opposite direction to where there's actually job growth. In fact, 7% increase over where we are today, 7% net job increase, right, is things that have to do with AI. Mostly, right? So it's scientists, engineers, pretty much every one of those things is like a high-end tech job, I think is fair to say. Here's Ethan Mollick, author, professor in the AI machine learning space. One useful thing is his newsletter. He tends to be pretty good at cutting through the noise and focusing on the things where you need a little bit of like a nuance and understanding to get to the meaning of it all. He's saying there continue to be hints of unexpected decreases in employment and increases in productivity in the macro data. Far too early to draw firm conclusions that this is in some part due to AI, right? So it's too early to tell, or to be clear, so I'm not changing what he's saying. So it's too early to draw firm conclusions. Like we can't say for certain, but maybe, right? It seems like there's some data supporting this, but he's saying, though it is the pattern you might expect. So in other words, if this was due to AI, the data that we're seeing would support it. So 2 big revisions in the jobs numbers have 2 important implications. The economy is in the midst of a bigger disruption than most people realized. So again, the economy is in a bigger disruption than we realized and we were aware of. There's something happening that people aren't quite observing to its full effect. Productivity is growing faster than most people thought, right? So this is important to understand. If, that's the promise of AI, of automation, of these tools, we're able to get done more with less. And productivity is equals to GDP, the gross domestic product, kind of the total output of a country, divided by hours worked. A smaller denominator means productivity growth may be 0.5% faster than previously estimated. Now, everybody in the replies are fighting on whether this is true or not. Everybody has their own opinions. I'm not going to go down that path. Economics just seems like one of those subjects that gets everybody's blood boiling, which makes perfect sense. And just one last data point. So this is a Stanford study called Canaries in the Coal Mine. 6 facts about the recent employment effects of artificial intelligence. So I apologize, I didn't have a chance to peruse this quite yet, so I will commit the grave sin of getting a ChatGPT summary. I do use this to get summaries of various papers. I use a GPT-5 Pro. If you have the Pro subscription, you specifically select Pro. That tends to lead to, especially for like deep research like this, tends to lead to better answers. Not necessarily. Sometimes you can just leave it on auto, but when I need something done well, I usually make sure it's on Pro. It'll take some time to do it, but here are the most important bullet points that it pulled out of the paper. I didn't specifically ask about anything specific in the paper. I just said, what are the main sort of findings in this paper? I was saying that early career workers, 22 to 25, in the most AI exposed jobs, right? So not gardeners or landscaping people or people in construction, right? So it's software development, customer service, all those other jobs, clerks and all that stuff that we saw being disrupted. Those people saw large employment declines, about a 13% relative drop versus least exposed peers. And this is important. Older cohorts in the same jobs were stable/growing, right? So when we're looking at those same people from a while ago, when we look at those sort of clusters of people, those same jobs in that same age group from the past, those jobs were stable and or growing, right? So this is a very recent scenario, and it seems like a pretty big reversal, right? So it's out of nowhere, you can have jobs growing and then now it's declining 13% year over year. Or I guess they're saying a 13% relative drop versus least exposed peers. Now you might be saying, yeah, but like, what if it's just a bad economy? They're saying overall employment kept rising, right? So this isn't happening across the board. Again, this is a very specific segment that we're looking at. Overall employment is going up to the moon, right? It's just those early young workers, entry level jobs in those specific industries that are recently and sharply declining. The declines concentrate where AI is used to automate tasks. Occupations where AI is more augmentative show no similar entry-level decline and sometimes growth. Now, we've covered this before. So Anthropic, the frontier AI lab, they have a Anthropic economic index, right? They're trying to understand AI's effect on the economy over time. The reason I bring that up is this. The paper out of Stanford does rely on that for a lot of its data. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. I just thought that was interesting. Now, I think we're going to have to dive deeper into this paper because it's very interesting, but at just a glance, it seems like it's pretty obvious that, this red line is somewhere at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, let's say maybe right before 2023 started. And we can see that the people starting in their career ages 22 to 25, as you can see here, they're seeing a drop off. Pretty significant ones, right? In 2025, it's at the lowest point. It's noticeable in the next age group, 31 to 34, but it's not as pronounced. And it seems pretty level by the time you're in your 40s. So all the people that are already established, all the old guys, they're all like, well, that's cool. We're good. At least they're not getting pushed out by this automation. But the younger you are, those initial formative years in your career, if you will, there does seem to be a very strong effect, or at least it's easily noticeable. You see that there's something happening, and it wasn't happening for a long time. This is just since, let's call it 2023, the beginning or just before 2023. And the other important thing to understand is that this is a robust trend, meaning that they haven't found some other thing that easily explains it, right? So this is not driven by tech firms. This isn't just happening in the Bay Area and not anywhere else in the world. It's not concentrated for remote workers. It's across the board. Or pre-AI periods, there could have been other things that happened before, in 2020, what happened then that could have explained some of this. It's not that. This is a pattern that intensifies starting late 2022. So this is the TLDR, too long and didn't read. This is the TLDR for the Stanford paper, and this is the TLDR for the TLDR. AI seems to be substituting certain entry-level skills, and it seems to not be hurting more experience-based skills, right? So if you've been around for a decade or two in your career, you're probably fine. If you're trying to get into a new career, it's your first 5 years or so, you're going to see this a lot, right? So this is hurting new grads more than experienced workers. Now, if you're thinking, so what, why is it that's just a small portion of the economy? It's kind of crucial one. That's the people, when they're just starting out, usually have less money. That's how they get on that sort of career path. Those entry-level jobs are almost like a bridge until they're in their 30s and 40s when they're making enough to have money and start spending on buying houses and families and whatnot. But those early years are important for these people. And if all of those jobs get automated, there will be this gap. And I don't know if we have a way to fix it. I don't think we have a plan to how to deal with it. But also, of course, if we're projecting 7% net growth, so more jobs will be created than destroyed, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe people should just pivot to those new jobs instead of whatever they were doing. Who knows? But again, what if there's not going to be a net growth in jobs? Those jobs seem to be very much concentrated in AI. They said they're growing by 120% for some of those. Is that sustainable? Is that going to continue for decades and decades? Or is it that just everyone's piling into that field right now? How many people, how many tens of millions of people can be employed as machine learning specialists and autonomous car drivers? Can we create 90 million jobs in that field alone? I don't know. But Mogadad is saying that entire idea that it's going to create new jobs is 100% crap. Sam Altman got interviewed by Vinod Khosla, who's a very successful investor in the tech space. And he kind of laid out his ideas for where jobs are going, saying that the human touch is going to be very important in certain industries. For example, in education, for teachers, that human touch is going to be very important. Mr. Khosla did not agree with Mr. Altman on this subject.
Totally believe there's like something very deep in just knowing that it's a real person or not.
Yeah, I might disagree with you on that. I think,
Sam Altman was not amused.
but
I think there will be a far better AI investor than you very soon. And I
no
personally,
question about it.
well, no, but I personally still enjoy having dinner with you. And, if you tell me like, good job, or you should do this, that's more motivating to me than AI telling me that.
So Sam is going to keep him around as a cheerleader. When interviewers annoy Sam Altman and he takes some pot shots at them is possibly like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. Every time it happens, I'm just overjoyed. But speaking of OpenAI, they recently did talk about the whole job situation, expanding economic opportunity with AI. They're launching something like a LinkedIn, so some sort of a job placement for AI-enabled workers, as well as a sort of free university where people will be able to learn to use AI tools better. The classes will be taught by AI 100%. But I mean, if executed right, this could be a big deal because it can provide free AI training to a lot of people, right? So the idea of making it automated, that does seem like it could do a lot of good. Again, a lot of it depends on how it's built out, how well it works, etc. But this could be a big thing, a good thing. By the way, heading back to our WEF study here, there's one more other point that's very interesting to see, and that is this. This is the demand for generative AI skills. This is generative AI enrollment trend from 2022 to 2024, so just to the end of 2024. So as you can see here, it's going up and up. And you can imagine that in 2025, it's just continues upwards. People will want to learn to use AI. The demand for that is huge. The amount of jobs that are going to need AI skills, that's going to be growing. So if you're in AI or if you're good at using AI in whatever field you are, yes, there's going to be huge demand for that. But the question is, over the next 5 years, 10 years, will the amount of new jobs created, will they be bigger than the amount of jobs that are destroyed or where headcount is reduced? I have a hard time seeing where that would be coming from. Well, let me know if you disagree. I'm curious to know what y'all think. With this idea that there's more jobs created now, I don't fully grasp it. It seems like there's going to be less jobs, and specifically in those early career years, which are so crucial for development, for the economy, seems to be a kind of a domino that could set off a lot of bad things if we lose those people entering the workforce. We don't really know what that looks like. We don't really know what kind of a bad or good effect it's going to have, probably bad. So again, will AI take all of our jobs? Who knows? I don't know. I don't know if we have exact numbers on that. But what it really seems like is going to happen, there, I fixed it. AI will reduce a lot of entry-level jobs by 2030. It sure seems like that's where things are going. Let me know if I'm missing something. I care about what you think. Leave it down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.